There are some personality traits we all get, but there's one that seems to constantly be misunderstood. People who genuinely like to be alone. It's often seen as something weird or sad, but what we're about to find out is that there's a really rich and complex world going on behind the scenes.
Okay, be honest with me. Have you ever felt that little jolt of pure relief when your phone buzzes and a friend cancels plans? If the idea of an unexpected quiet night to yourself sounds like hitting the jackpot, well, then you are in exactly the right place. So first things first, let's talk about labels. Society has a ton of ideas about people who enjoy their own company, and let's be real, most of them aren't great. We've got to get past these stereotypes.
Yeah, I'm sure these sound familiar. Antisocial, sad, arrogant, or just weird. These are the go-to assumptions, right? The second someone picks a quiet night in over a big party, people are quick to slap on one of these labels. But they're just scratching the surface, and they're missing the real story completely.
This is really the core question, isn't it? What if this whole thing isn't a red flag? What if it's actually a sign of something totally different? What if we've been looking at the whole idea of a loner completely backwards? All right, let's get into it. Time for some serious myth-busting. We're going to toss out those old, tired stereotypes and replace them with what's actually going on, psychologically speaking. Let's break down the 3 biggest myths right now.
Okay, first up, the big one. This idea that people who like being alone must secretly hate everyone. But the reality is so much more interesting than that. It's not about avoiding people, it's about being really smart with your social battery. They'd much rather have one deep conversation than 100 shallow ones. It's all about quality over quantity. Next is the myth that if you're alone, you must be lonely and sad. Man, people get this one mixed up all the time. But for so many, happiness is an inside job. It doesn't need an audience or constant validation from others. They can be perfectly happy, totally engaged, and having a great time all by themselves.
And finally, there's this really damaging myth that there has to be something broken or wrong with someone who prefers their own company. This isn't a flaw that needs to be fixed, it's just a personality trait, no different than being an extrovert. It's simply another way of moving through the world and, more importantly, a different way of recharging.
So when you boil it all down, after you bust all the myths, you realize it all hinges on one single, absolutely crucial difference. To really get it, you have to understand this one core idea that it changes everything. And here it is. This is the absolute heart of it all. The difference between solitude and loneliness. Now, from the outside, they can look identical, just a person alone in a room. But on the inside, they are completely different worlds. And the key that unlocks it all? The power of choice.
Look at this. The difference is just night and day. Solitude is chosen. It's a state you decide to enter because you want to recharge or think or just be. That's why it feels peaceful and you feel in control. But loneliness is imposed. It's a painful feeling that happens to you. You don't want it and you feel like you have no control. One is a sanctuary, the other is a prison.
And that right there, that's the huge shift in thinking we need to make. The second you realize we're talking about someone choosing to be alone, you see it's not a weakness. It's not a problem. In fact, it can be the total opposite, a massive source of personal strength.
So if it's a strength, what does that actually mean? What does it look like? Well, it turns out people who are really comfortable with solitude often develop some pretty amazing superpowers. Let's dive into some of these hidden benefits.
Think about it. When you finally tune out all the external noise, your brain has room to play, and that's when creativity skyrockets. And all that time alone naturally leads to stronger self-awareness, because you're actually listening to your own thoughts for a change. And here's the kicker. That inward focus actually makes you better with other people through deeper empathy. When you understand yourself, you can understand them. And holding all this together is just plain better concentration, a skill that's like a muscle you build in the quiet.
So we've touched on a few great things, but these 3 right here, creativity, self-awareness, and empathy, these are the real game changers. Pretty ironic that spending time alone can actually make you more creative and more empathetic towards others. Not so antisocial now, is it?
Okay, so where does all of this leave us? We've busted the myths, we've looked at the superpowers. What's the big takeaway here? It really all comes down to one simple but incredibly powerful idea: self-acceptance.
If you remember one thing from all this, please let it be this. Liking to be alone isn't about building a fortress to keep the world out. It's about opening a door to spend time with the one person you're with your entire life, yourself. It's about finally letting yourself in.
So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. It doesn't matter if you're the life of the party or a quiet observer. What incredible things might you be missing? What ideas might you have? What parts of yourself could you discover if you just carved out a little more time to be in your own company?